To discuss, I'm joined now by security and counterterrorism strategies expert, global expert, former NYPD detective Thomas Ruskin. Welcome to the program, Mr. Ruskin. What exactly is your initial response to the news coming, especially now that we're hearing that an ISIS flag and bomb are being recovered as a result of raids?
Well, I think around this world, our thoughts and prayers have to go out for the people of Brussels and for the people who have been severely injured. Remember, we have a couple hundred people in the hospital recovering from these tragic terrorist attacks today. Relative to the investigation, the Brussels authorities with other governmental authorities will put together the pieces of this puzzle, the pieces of the crime, to bring the people responsible to justice.
I'm wondering what you think, though, about the fact that it seems as though authorities were aware that some sort of attack was imminent or that they were coming, especially considering the individual involved with the Paris attacks was just arrested in Brussels a few days ago. I mean, how is it possible that law enforcement can know that something like this is happening and then it still happens?
Because you don't have the details of the puzzle. You may know that an attack is imminent. And Salim, the gentleman you referred to, who was arrested the other day by authorities, may have indicated that an attack is forthcoming, but sometimes all they have to do is get it right once. Law enforcement has to get it right every single day of the year.
How is it possible for law enforcement to get it right? I mean, what needs to happen in order for law enforcement to know of these attacks, especially because we see the police out in huge numbers and we know of surveillance on individuals?
Well, surveillance goes on every single day. In this country, we have joint terrorist task force made up of FBI and local police departments. New York City specifically has one. And I'm sure today they've heightened up their surveillance on certain people who potentially could be terrorists or terrorist suspects. But, you know, every single day of this year, law enforcement around the world is concentrating on trying to break these things or these terrorist attacks up, or these terrorist plans up. And technology and law enforcement technology has to keep up with the terrorists and their ways of communicating with each other.
What do you see as the root of these attacks?
Well, the root is their fundamental nuts, and they're people who want to do nothing but cause innocent people injury or death. Who was in the airport? It wasn't a military target. It wasn't a police station. It was innocent people either going home or seeing their loved ones, picking them up at the airport or saying goodbye to them. That's who they killed today. They didn't kill people on a battlefield. These people are radical Islamists who have nothing better to do than try and hurt and kill innocent people around this world.
Are they radical Islamists, though? Because we look at the case of the Paris attacks and we see that many of those individuals involved didn't even seem to be interested in religion until deciding to join the self-proclaimed Islamic State and launch these attacks. There's no actual religious connection to their actions.
I agree with you, but you know, somehow some of these people are becoming radicalized. And I think it's important from a law enforcement standpoint to start understanding what is drawing them to this, how we basically can better monitor people who may be becoming radicalized, and then when they're coming back to our civilized society, how to better monitor them or interview them to see if they become radicalized, and if we have to, then surveil them.
So when we say that we want to look at what causes them to be radicalized, I don't know, I can think of the bombers responsible for the London train bombings several years ago. They said that they traveled to Palestine and saw evidence of the occupation and were so upset that they came back and felt radicalized. Or you look at the example that the gentleman I interviewed earlier brought up, Kulabi, who conducted the attack on the kosher market in Paris and said that it was his experience in prison. So how can law enforcement address or monitor these people without acknowledging the roots of what's radicalizing them?
I think we have to understand, I think part of it is exactly to your point, which is a very good point. We have to understand what is looking to radicalize them. We have to better identify them. We have a better chance in the United States than Europe does because of the freedom of the borders. And to Hillary Clinton's point today, I think the EU has to start looking at the potential of hardening the borders there and making sure that people who come into their country are vetted and they know who's coming in. And basically, if someone comes in of a suspicious nature, you then have to take additional investigative steps to determine if that person has become radicalized or if they're a threat to your homeland.
Fascinating to get your take. International security expert Thomas Ruskin, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.